Well, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, has been submitting himself to intense questioning at the Leveson inquiry into media ethics. Mr Cameron says he believes relations between politicians and the media have grown too close over the past 20 years. But he's defended his own relationship with media players, including Rupert Murdoch and Rebekah Brooks. Mr Cameron has also poured cold water on the concept of there being implied deals between politicians and media proprietors. In particular, he strongly denied claims he agreed to alter policy positions in exchange for the support of the Sun newspaper.
There was, as I've said before, there was no overt deal for support, there was no covert deal, there was no nods and winks, there was a Conservative politician, me, trying to win over newspapers, trying to win over television, trying to win over proprietors, but not trading policies for that support. And when you look at the detail of this, as I say, it is complete nonsense.
And our Europe correspondent, Philip Williams, joins us now from London. What did you make of the Cameron defence there, Phil?
Well, interesting, isn't it? He says we're too close, the politicians are too close to newspaper proprietors, and then goes on to list all the contacts he's had, multiple contacts over many years, particularly in opposition, to which he said, of course I was in opposition, I was trying to get into government, I had to win these people over. But he seems to be arguing that it's other people or other MPs that had the problem and not himself. He says that his relationships with all the media personalities, especially Rupert Murdoch, have been above board, and yes, he's listened to what they've said, but they've not unduly influenced him. He's been trying to influence them to get his support.
Here's another intriguing revelation, a text message to David Cameron on the eve of the 2009 Conservative Party conference from the then News of the World editor Rebekah Brooks, his close friend, in which she says, "We are in this together." It's a strange text message, but it certainly indicates the closeness of their relationship.
It does, and let me just expand a little on that. It says, "I'm so rooting for you, not just as a personal friend, but because professionally we are in this together. Speech of your life, yes, he can." So it does show a certain closeness there, and he doesn't hide that. He says, yes, he was close to her and has been ever since. He married a close friend of his who lives almost next door. They socialise very often. He doesn't apologise for that. But again, he says, look, I separated the professional from the personal. I wasn't unduly influenced. But clearly she, in that text message, indicates that she saw them working towards the same sort of goals. But it has to be said in his defence that at that point he knew that Murdoch was going to switch sides and was going to support his side of politics. So, in a sense, there was an implicit understanding that they were in it together to a degree.
So what have we found out of the more important relationship, the relationship between him, David Cameron, and Rupert Murdoch?
Well, again, he says that, yes, he's had a number of meetings and that they've been above board and that Rupert Murdoch always expresses his opinion, not always pressuring about specific media issues. He's got broader issues that he likes to discuss. Here's a little of what Counsel Assisting Robert Jay elicited on that very question about just after the Sun had switched sides and gone to support the Conservatives.
That seems to be the first meeting you had with Rupert Murdoch after the Sun's support had changed. Can you remember anything about that conversation, particularly about the change of support?
Not particularly. I mean, in most of my lunches or breakfasts with Rupert Murdoch, the conversation has always been predominantly about economic issues, security, geopolitical issues. He was very interested in what was happening in Afghanistan, very interested in global markets. I think it's, of course, all businesses have their interests and the rest of it, but in my dealings with Rupert Murdoch, most of the conversation has been about big international political issues.
Phil, there's been much cross-examination about whether there was a quid pro quo on policy issues?
Yes, there was, and again, firmly denied that there was no deal ever done. In fact, he slammed suggestions from Gordon Brown who had accused him of doing a deal and getting the Sun's support with an implicit deal. But that's been denied, and so far there's no sort of killer evidence or proof been presented that seems to indicate otherwise. So all along he's said, yes, I have spoken to these powerful people, I have listened to what they say, and I have independently come to my own judgments. So it's a very hard thing to argue against when it's coming from the Prime Minister at this point.
Overall, it is quite remarkable to see a sitting Prime Minister cross-examined in this rather relentless and time-consuming way by a barrister who simply doesn't care about the amount of time he's got the leader of the country sitting there. How is he actually handling it?
Yes, 7 hours sitting in the box. He's only halfway through, less than halfway through, and he's been handling it pretty well. He looks pretty comfortable. He's been answering all of the questions. He hasn't really appeared to be stumped at any point. A couple of times he said, look, I'll have to go back because I can't remember a particular issue, but he hasn't looked evasive. He's looked in control. So, from his point of view, so far so good.
Briefly, he did get a bit tetchier when the questioning moved on to why he'd appointed Andy Coulson, the former tabloid editor, as his media advisor. One wit tweeted, Cameron looks desperate for the lunch bell to ring.
Probably was at that point. That is the one point that he does feel let down on, as he says, that Andy Coulson, of course, he appointed Andy Coulson just a few months after he'd resigned as his position as editor of the News of the World over the first hacking scandal. And he said he'd asked him directly, did you know this of the hacking issues, and had been told no. And he said, well, if that is different, if it turns out, and we've got court cases going, of course, we can't say too much about it, but if it turns out differently, then no one more disappointed than him. But that's 20/20 hindsight, and he doesn't have that, and he had to deal with the facts as he had them at the time. And he said that he was dealing honourably at the time with that man, giving him a second chance, and if he let him down, then he feels obviously very let down about that too, but that he did nothing wrong at that time. OK,
Phil, another 3.5 hours to go. I think you said enjoy it. We'll speak to you tomorrow. Thanks very much.